get ready to dive deep into the world of Tool. It looks like you brought quite the collection of lyrics, notes, and FAQs, so clearly you're ready to explore what's really behind their music. We're going to try to uncover the symbolism and meaning behind a lot of these songs, stuff about the shadow self and spiritual awakening and more.
You know, it's interesting, their music often feels like this invitation to explore the darker sides of humanity. They don't shy away from those shadows.
No, they really don't. Speaking of shadows, you've got psychopathy flagged in your notes here. Pretty intense track to start off with, but right away, those lyrics about disembodied voices, the imagined interplay. It's like this instant image of inner turmoil.
Yeah, and Psychopathy is a really great example of how Tool uses their music to explore the shadow self. So that's those hidden parts of ourselves that we don't really want to look at, that we try to repress. And Tool, instead of fearing it, they bring it out into the open and encourage us to really acknowledge it and integrate it.
So it's like they're saying, hey, this part of you exists, let's take a look. Instead of shying away, they're diving right into it.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual psychology either. There's a collective dimension to it as well. So you think about a song like Anima, much more aggressive, but also tackling this idea of facing the shadows of society, the hypocrisy, the corruption, the things we kind of don't want to deal with.
So they're not just asking us to look inward, but outward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tool's music is like this mirror, reflecting back both our individual and collective darkness.
And you've also got Seven Empist marked here. How does that song kind of play into this idea of the shadow self?
So with Seven Empist, it adds like another layer to it. It suggests that the shadow self can be deceptive, even to ourselves. So you've got those lines about misleading tranquility, dubious state of serenity, like warnings against being complacent, mistaking the calm before the storm for real peace.
It's like we need to stay vigilant, constantly question our own perceptions and motivations.
Exactly. And this idea connects to one of the biggest themes in Tool's music: spiritual awakening, spiritual evolution. Recognizing that shadow is just the first step.
You've got pneuma highlighted here. And it's interesting because that word itself is so loaded.
Right. It's not just a cool song title. Pneuma can mean breath of life, soul, this vital force that animates everything. And the lyrics of the song really do seem to embrace this idea of like reaching beyond just the physical, striving for something more.
Yeah, there's that line, bound to reach out and beyond this flesh become pneuma. It feels almost transcendent, like breaking free of the material world.
Exactly, and it ties into a lot of different spiritual and philosophical traditions. Tool doesn't necessarily say we believe in this one thing, but they pull from a lot of different sources and make us consider these different perspectives about consciousness and what it even means to exist.
So pneuma is about recognizing that spark of the divine in us and trying to connect more deeply with it.
That's one way to look at it. You've also got lateralist noted down here, which also explores spiritual evolution. But lateralist comes at it more from a mathematical scientific view. The lyrics talk about Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, suggesting that there's an underlying order and pattern to the universe, and even to our own spiritual growth.
Like suggesting that evolution isn't random, but that there's this blueprint in the fabric of existence.
Right. And you see that blueprint reflected in nature, math, even our consciousness. Lateralus encourages us to embrace that process of growth, spiraling outwards, upwards, always expanding what we understand.
It's a really powerful message. It seems like they're not shying away from the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What's our place in all of this?
And that's what makes them so interesting. They're not just writing songs, they're exploring profound ideas about philosophy, spirituality, making us think about what life really means.
Speaking of meaning, you flagged some lines from Descending. Different vibe than Pneuma or Lateralus.
Descending feels more urgent, like a warning. It talks about the state of the world, what happens because of the choices we make, and the possibility of destroying everything if we don't wake up.
Yeah, you highlighted the lines, sound our dire reveille and mitigate our ruin. Definitely a call to action.
Right. Descending suggests we're at this crossroads. We can achieve great things, but we can also destroy ourselves. It's like a wake-up call, telling us to take responsibility for what we do and make a better future.
So it's not just about growing spiritually as individuals, but recognizing we're all connected and doing something to make a better world.
That's a key takeaway. And it's interesting. Descending came out before the pandemic and everything else that's happened recently. It's almost prophetic with how urgent it feels.
It's pretty chilling. It's like they have this insight into what we're all anxious about. And as we go through their music, it seems like they talk a lot about deception and manipulation.
Yeah, they definitely don't shy away from the darker parts of human nature.
You've marked Contagion here. What makes that song so powerful when it comes to those themes?
Contagion is raw emotion. It captures that feeling of being betrayed, used by someone you trusted. Like the lines, "Naive, I opened up to you, venom and mania." You really feel it.
You can feel the pain, the violation.
Yeah.
But it also seems like it goes beyond just a personal betrayal.
Exactly. It hints at bigger forces at play. Just the title, Contagion, suggests this manipulation can spread, infect entire societies. It wants us to think critically, to question what we're told, be wary of anyone who wants to control us.
It's like a warning about how seductive propaganda is, how easy it is to be swayed by someone charismatic or by dangerous ideas.
That's a great way to put it. And this ties into another theme that comes up a lot with tools searching for what's real in a world full of fakes.
And looks like we've got Invincible marked next. How does this fit into the idea of manipulation and authenticity?
So Invincible kind of flips the script. It's not about being a victim of manipulation. It's about fighting back against it. The song talks about that struggle to stay true to yourself, keep your integrity, even when the world is pressuring you.
You highlighted the line about the warrior struggling to remain consequential. Really defiant.
Yeah, and that warrior archetype is important. It's that inner strength, that resilience we need to navigate a world that wants to make us into something we're not.
So Invincible is about finding that strength inside to push back, whether it's coming from individuals or from society itself.
Absolutely. It's about staying true to yourself, even when it's hard, even when it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle.
It also feels like Invincible touches on aging and mortality too.
Yeah.
Especially with lines like armor wearing thin and that fear of becoming irrelevant.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tool definitely isn't afraid to talk about those existential anxieties that come with getting older. There's vulnerability there, recognizing our limits and that we can't escape death. But there's also that defiance, like they're not going down without a fight.
It's interesting how they combine those two things, accepting we're mortal, but still driven to achieve things, keep creating, keep evolving.
Yeah, that tension makes the song really powerful. It reflects like the human condition, right? Trying to find meaning and purpose when we know we're not here forever.
It's that reminder that life is precious and it doesn't last forever. Got to make the most of it.
Absolutely. And this idea of mortality brings us back to Descending, which also deals with the possibility of things ending, both for us individually and for everyone. But where Descending focuses on what we do and the consequences, Invincible is more personal, more about how we feel about time passing.
Like two sides of the same coin. One is about the external threats, the other is that internal struggle we all face as we get older.
And both are ultimately challenging us to face those fears and make choices about how we live. Do we give in to despair, or do we find a way to embrace right now and make our time matter?
Big questions, for sure. And talking about all these deep themes, it makes me think about all the symbolism Tool uses. You mentioned the spiral earlier with Lateralis, but it feels like that symbol pops up in other songs too.
Oh yeah, the spiral is a big one for Tool. And it's a powerful image, right? It represents growth, evolution, how life is cyclical. Think about Fibonacci in Lateralis, how each number is the sum of the two before it, and it creates that spiral pattern.
Yeah, like a visual representation of that idea of constantly expanding and evolving.
Exactly. And the spiral can also mean that journey inward, exploring the subconscious mind, going deeper into yourself. We see that in Parable and Parabola, which are about breaking free from the ego and connecting with something bigger.
So the spiral can be both outward growth and inward self-discovery.
Exactly. It speaks to how Tool approaches music, looking at the whole picture, not just one part of the human experience.
And you brought up the shadow earlier, talking about the shadow self, but it seems like that goes beyond just us as individuals.
Definitely. The shadow can be those parts of ourselves we hide or deny. But it can also represent the darkness in society as a whole, violence, greed, corruption.
Like a collective shadow that we're all contributing to, even if we don't realize it.
Right. And Tool's music often confronts us with that, making us acknowledge the ways we're all part of systems that cause suffering.
Not an easy thing to realize, but we need to if we want to make things better.
And then you have the Tempest. That comes up a lot in Tool, both literally and figuratively. Like in Seven Empist, the energy of that song is just turbulent.
Yeah, it's like a musical storm, chaotic and exciting at the same time. But what does the tempest mean beyond the literal storm?
Well, a tempest can be chaos, destruction, shaking things up, but it can also be a force that creates change, destroying the old to make way for something new.
Like they say, got to break it down to break through.
Exactly. The tempest can be those crisis moments, those periods of intense change that lead to growth and evolution in the end.
It's interesting how Tool uses these symbols to give their music more depth and layers. The words aren't just words, they're like keys to deeper meanings.
And that's part of why people are so drawn to their music. It makes you think, it
Yeah.
makes you interpret, it makes you find your own connection to it.
Like they're giving you a puzzle to solve, but there's no single right answer.
That's what art is all about. Open to interpretation, sparks conversation, makes you engage with it on a deeper level.
We've been talking a lot about the serious side of Tool, but they have a sense of humor too, right?
Absolutely. They can be incredibly witty and satirical even when they're dealing with dark or complex stuff.
Yeah, like in Hooker with a Penis, where they're going after the hypocrisy of the music industry. Or in Anima, where they use dark humor to critique how obsessed we are with consumerism and superficial things.
That humor is important. It adds another layer to their music, keeps it from feeling like they're preaching or lecturing.
It's like saying, don't take yourself too seriously, even when we're talking about big ideas.
Exactly. Being able to balance seriousness with humor, that's a sign of a true artist.
You know, as we've been talking, it struck me how Tool's music connects with so many people on such a deep level. It's not just entertainment, it's something more.
I think it's because they tap into something universal, something that goes beyond culture or age. They're exploring those fundamental questions about being human, searching for meaning, struggling with our limitations, wanting connection and transcendence.
It's like they're giving a voice to the anxieties and hopes that we all have, but don't always talk about.
And in doing so, they create this sense of community, a shared experience that helps us feel less alone in our struggles.
Like a tribe of seekers, brought together by this music that challenges us, inspires us, and ultimately helps us make sense of the world.
That's beautifully put. That sense of community is one of the most powerful things about Tool's music.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
And that even when things are dark, there's still hope, there's still beauty, there's still a reason to keep pushing for something more.
A powerful message to leave our listeners with. But before we wrap up, we got to talk about how Tool's music is often misunderstood.
You're right. People call them pretentious, too complex, even nihilistic, but I think those criticisms are missing something.
It's like they're hearing the surface and not going deeper, not really listening.
Exactly. Tool's music requires you to actively listen. You can't just have it on in the background. It needs engagement, thought, a willingness to question what you think you know.
And that's why they have such dedicated fans. It's not for everyone, but for those who connect with it, it becomes like a lifelong passion.
It's a journey of discovery. The more you explore, the more you find.
Speaking of exploring, we've covered a lot today, but there's always more to discover in Tool's lyrics.
Absolutely. Each song is like a little world reflecting their whole philosophy, and every time you listen, you find new insights and connections.
So to our listener, keep digging, keep questioning, keep exploring. The answers are there waiting to be found. And what's really cool is how they don't just talk about these ideas, they build them right into the music itself.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Tool uses their music to create this whole experience that's more than just listening. You feel it, like physically. The time signatures, polyrhythms, how the energy shifts, it all messes with our perceptions, even makes us uncomfortable.
Like they're intentionally pushing us out of our comfort zones, making us face the unknown, both inside ourselves and out in the world.
Exactly. And that feeling of being unsettled, it can actually help us grow. It forces us to pay attention, to really listen, to question everything we're hearing and feeling. That's where the real magic of Tool happens.
It's not just something in the background. It's like you're actively engaging with the sound and the emotion.
Right. And that's why I think their music really hits home for people who are looking for something deeper than just entertainment. They want art that challenges them intellectually, emotionally, spiritually.
It's like this call to wake up, to break free from the ordinary, and embrace how complex life really is.
And that's what we've been talking about this whole time, right? That Tool's music is this invitation to go on this journey of self-discovery, to face our shadows, search for meaning and connection, and ultimately become something more than we are now.
It's not always an easy journey, but it's worth it. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Tool's lyrics and inspired you to keep exploring their music with fresh ears and an open mind.
And remember, the spiral keeps going.